You're 50-something. You stop at a red light in a Honda CR-V with a car seat in the back. The light turns green and the guy behind you honks because you didn't move. You were busy air drumming the fill in Painkiller. Your kid says nothing. They've seen this before. Hey, Frank here. There's a denim vest in your garage. The patches are sun-faded. The Iron Maiden one is barely hanging on by 3 threads. You haven't worn it in 20 years, and you haven't thrown it out, and you never will. This is the psychology of Gen X Metalheads. And here's the punchline before we even start. Scientists actually studied you. They tracked down 1980s metal fans 30 years later to see how badly the music had broken you. They published the results in 2015. You came out ahead of everyone else. Happier as a kid, better adjusted as an adult, fewer regrets than your non-metal friends. The music your mother thought was destroying you was building you instead. Let's start with the panic. September 19th, 1985. The U.S. Senate holds a hearing about heavy metal music. Tipper Gore is there. Susan Baker is there. 4 political wives have formed a group called the Parents Music Resource Center, and they've decided that the music you're listening to is sexualizing children, promoting suicide, and inviting the devil into the den. They brought a list. 15 songs. The Filthy 15. Prince was on top of it. Twisted Sister was on it. So were Judas Priest, Motley Crue, AC/DC, Black Sabbath, and Venom. The hearing produced the warning sticker, the black and white one. Parental advisory, explicit lyrics. Here's what they didn't see coming. The sticker became a feature. You walked into Sam Goody, you flipped through the racks, and you looked for that sticker the same way someone looks for a sale tag. The sticker meant the album was worth your $8. The sticker meant your mom was going to make a face. The sticker meant something was actually happening on this record. Dee Snider sat down in front of the Senate in tight jeans and a cut-off denim vest with curly blonde hair down to his shoulders and dismantled them. He had a college degree. He didn't drink. He didn't do drugs. He was a married Christian. He embarrassed the panel and walked out. The hearing was supposed to scare kids off the music. It sold more records than any marketing campaign in metal's entire history. You watched your favorite bands turn into national news. You watched your music become a culture war. You were 13 years old and you'd been promoted to public enemy. That sticker is still on those CDs in your basement. Now let's talk about how you actually got the music. There was no Spotify. There was no Pandora. MTV played 4 hair bands on rotation, and you wanted Slayer. You wanted Exodus. You wanted Possessed. You wanted the demo that you'd heard about but had never heard. So you did what every metalhead in 1985 did. You opened the back of Kerrang! Magazine. You found the pen pal section. You wrote a letter, by hand, to a kid in Belgium. You sent him a blank Maxell XL 2-90 cassette and $3 and a list of what you wanted. 6 weeks later, a package showed up with a tape covered in his handwriting. Side A, Metallica, No Life Till Leather. Side B, Slayer live in Anaheim. This was tape trading. This is how Metallica became Metallica. They put out a demo in 1982, kids dubbed it for each other, the dubs got dubbed, and by 1983, the Bay Area had a band the rest of the country was already obsessed with, and the band still didn't have a record deal. You learned things doing this. You learned how to be patient. You learned how to write a thank you note. You learned how to take care of an object, because if you snapped the tab off a cassette, you just erased a demo nobody else in your town owned. You learned that the kid in Holland and the kid in Sweden and the kid in your high school cared about the same 30 seconds of a guitar solo you cared about. And that meant something. That meant you had people, even when you couldn't see anyone else in your town who got it. The internet didn't invent online community. You did. You did it with stamps. Now the vest, the Kutte. That's the actual word for it. German, from the same root as cowl. Sleeveless denim, cut from a jacket, covered in patches, pins, studs, sometimes hand-painted album art across the back. If you wore one in 1988, the vest told a complete story. Every patch was evidence. The Maiden patch said you were a fan of Maiden. The faded Maiden patch said you'd been a fan of Maiden since 1983. The Powerslave patch on the left chest meant you owned the album. The Live After Death patch on the back meant you'd seen the tour. The order of the patches mattered. The fading mattered. The threadbare ones mattered most. You could spot another metalhead from across a parking lot. 2 seconds. You knew his bands, his loyalty, and roughly when he'd started. It was a resume you could read from 40 feet away. Try doing that with a Spotify Wrapped. Your mother hated the vest. She'd suggest washing it. You'd refuse. The dirt was part of the data. The smoke smell from your last show was part of the data. She thought she was raising a teenager. She was actually raising a curator. Saturday night, midnight, April 18th, 1987. MTV launches a show called Headbangers Ball. 90 minutes, then 2 hours, then 3. Bands you'd only seen in magazines now had videos. Music you only owned on third-generation cassette dubs was now being broadcast into your living room. You set the VCR. You taped the show. You watched it again Sunday afternoon. You watched it again Wednesday night. You played the bass parts on a tennis racket in your bedroom. Ricky Rachtman ran the show from 1990. He owned a club in Hollywood called the Cat House. He was the cool uncle you didn't have. The guy who actually knew the bands. The guy who said 1 foot in the gutter at the end of every episode. The guy who treated you like you were already part of the scene, instead of a 16-year-old in Akron. Monday morning at school, the conversation started in the parking lot before homeroom. Did you see who Ricky had on? Did you catch the Anthrax interview? Did you hear what Phil said? You had Saturday at midnight, a VCR, and 3 other kids who watched the same show. That was your group chat. That was enough. A lot of you have been leaving comments about your parents, your childhood, the rooms you grew up in. Those comments are why I sat down and wrote a book called Psychology of Gen X. It's in the description. And to everyone on the Patreon already, and to the ones thinking about it, you're the reason this keeps going. Ad-free versions of every video, name in the credits at the end. Links below, QR codes on screen. Now the science. In 2015, a psychologist named Tasha Howe at Humboldt State University published a study with a long title. The short version: she tracked down 154 people who had been heavy metal fans, musicians, or groupies in the 1980s. She tracked down 80 people from the same generation who listened to other music. She added 153 current college students for comparison. Total, 377 people. She asked them about their childhoods, their adult functioning, their happiness, their regrets, their mental health. The result is the funniest finding in pop psychology in the last 20 years. The metalheads were happier as kids than their non-metal peers. They were better adjusted as adults than their non-metal peers. They reported fewer regrets. About 33% had any regrets about their youth, compared to 51% of the non-metal group. They were less likely to have sought psychological counseling. The kids the experts were worried about turned out to be the most well-adjusted group in the study. The reason the researchers gave matters. They said the metal subculture worked as a protective factor. Translation: belonging to a community of fans who all loved the same thing, who all looked the same, who all defended each other against the same culture war attacks. That belonging built resilience. The denim vest had a job. The uniform meant you had people. The patches meant your people could find you. Tipper Gore was worried you were going to grow up to be a delinquent. You grew up to be a paralegal with a good marriage and a 401k. There's another study worth telling you about. University of Queensland, 2015. A researcher named Leah Sharman put 39 extreme music fans through a controlled experiment. She made them angry on purpose. She had them complain about something frustrating for 16 minutes. Then she either played them their favorite metal song for 10 minutes, or sat them in silence. The metal group calmed down faster than the silence group. Their hostility ratings dropped. Their irritation dropped. Their stress dropped. Their heart rate stabilized. Metal worked as a release valve. The listeners came in angry. The song ran. The anger drained out. This is what was happening to you at 15. You came home from school. Something had gone wrong. A teacher, a girl, a bully, your dad. You put on Rain in Blood. You closed the bedroom door. 40 minutes later, you came out and you were fine. You were doing emotional regulation. You just didn't know that's what therapists called it. They charge $150 an hour to teach grown adults what Slayer taught you for the price of a cassette tape. One more thing about metal nobody warned you about. It was teaching you to read. Iron Maiden's Rime of the Ancient Mariner is a 13-minute song built around a Samuel Taylor Coleridge poem from 1798. Their song, To Tame a Land, is about Frank Herbert's Dune. The Trooper is about the charge of the Light Brigade, the Crimean War, 1854. Power Slave is about Egyptian pharaohs. Aces High is about the Battle of Britain. Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls is the Hemingway novel. One is Dalton Trumbo's Johnny Got His Gun. The Thing That Should Not Be is H.P. Lovecraft. And Justice for All was an entire album about the U.S. legal system. Megadeth was reading you the newspaper. Peace Sells, Reagan-era cynicism. Holy Wars, religious conflict in Northern Ireland. Hangar 18, Cold War paranoia. Dave Mustaine handed you a worldview at 14 that most kids didn't develop until college. You walked into your local library and asked the librarian for The Rime of the Ancient Mariner because Iron Maiden had said the name, and Iron Maiden didn't lie. You read Hemingway because Metallica said his name. You looked up the Crimean War in the encyclopedia your parents bought at the supermarket, 1 volume a week. Metal was the only humanities curriculum in America that came with a guitar solo. You did the reading. You just didn't tell anyone. This is why you still know the words. 40 years later, the first 4 seconds of Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, still does something to you. You can pick out a Slash solo in 2 notes. Your kid plays you something heavy, and you can hear inside it what it borrowed from Sabbath, what it stole from Maiden, what part of the rhythm is a Pantera idea recycled. You know things about music nobody trained you to know. You still drive with the volume too loud. You still mosh in a small mental way in the produce aisle. You still defend Megadeth in conversations where defending Megadeth was not requested. The vest is still in the garage. You won't wear it. You won't throw it out. Your kid is going to find it after you're gone, and they're going to know exactly who you were before they were born. The legacy of Gen X Metal is bigger than the music. You held a community together with stamps. You ran the receipts on a culture war and came out on top. And 40 years later, the science came back with a verdict. The people who called you broken were wrong about you. Quick thing before I go. Psychology of Gen X covers the things I couldn't fit into one video. How the rooms you grew up in built the habits you have now, and why those habits keep showing up in your marriage and your work and the way you drive. Links in the description if you want to check it out. And to everyone watching, sharing, commenting, genuinely, thank you. If you want to go a step further, I have a Patreon. Subscribers get ad-free versions of every video. Your name goes in the credits at the end, and you help keep this channel running. Links right there too. QR codes on screen. The kids the country was scared of in 1985 turned into the most stable adults in the study. The music your parents thought would ruin you is the same music that taught you how to feel something all the way through and come out the other side. You're still here. You still know the words. One foot in the gutter. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.